Hello everyone, welcome back to my crafty little channel. I am so excited to share this card with you today. It is so cute. I made it with the Lawn Fawn Baked with Love stamp set. It is one that is a little bit older, but I think I only got it around Christmas time, and I'm trying to put it to good use because it is so cute. So here it is if you haven't seen it before. It is adorable. I love it so much, and these are the colors that I'm going to be focusing on using for this card. And I've got my 4 square backdrop. I got the portrait one. It took me so long to decide which one of those 4 square backdrops I wanted, but I finally settled on that one. Okay, so I'm going to stamp out these images and prep them for colouring in. I think I stamped a few more than what I ended up using on my card in the end, but I figure it's always better to have a few more than to run out when you're prepping the card in the final stages. So I went with the cake stand and this little shaker. I had big plans for this little shaker and I really struggled to work out a way to use it. So you're going to see me get a bit creative with a die that is definitely not intended for what I used it for. I had to think way outside the box for this one because my original ideas just weren't working. But that's just what I get for never really starting with a plan. I usually just start with a stamp set and the colors I want to use, and then I go from there. No real big plans when it comes to these things. So it's always interesting to see how my cards turn out in the end. So what I'm going to do here with the colouring is really, really basic shading. I use pretty much the same colour, just a little bit heavier in some of the areas to give it a really light shadow. I find this to be fairly effective. I have said in the past, I really don't have a lot of Copics. I own 12 and you're seeing 4 of them in this video. So I have to get a bit creative with the little amount that I have, and I think they turned out really good. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time colouring these in and adding some little white details to them. If you don't find colouring in or watching colouring in as therapeutic as I do, I finish around the 3-minute 50 mark. Now here's where things got a little bit interesting. I was trying to come up with a bit of a shaker pocket or window in the back of this card, and I couldn't find anything that would work. I don't have one of those little knives to cut things. I was trying to use a kitchen knife at one point. It was going to turn into a disaster. So I went through all of my dies and I actually found this little bit of the ice cream cone from one of my other Lawn Fawn sets, and it was the perfect shape. So I went ahead and used that, and I am amazed at how well it worked. So here I am just marking out on the card that's going to be the colour for the backdrop. It was funny how perfectly matched this pink cardstock was to the Copic marker that I was using. So I gave that a trim, and here I am just grabbing the little heart from the Baked with Love set. I used the one that's not filled out. I thought it would make a really cute little background, kind of like wallpaper behind all of these little kitchen items. So I stamped that out all over the place. I think I skip ahead a little bit here so we don't have to watch all of that. And then I will need to cut out the little window on this. So out of some white cardstock, I had already lined it up and cut it out, and I'm going to use that as a guide and slide that die in. It fits so perfectly like a puzzle piece. And then I cut that out. I disposed of that little piece because I realized I couldn't use that for the back of the window because it had that stitched pattern on it, but I'll fix that up in a minute. I cut out the same shape and used the die in the same spot on many white pieces of cardstock. I think I used maybe 6 or 7, just so that I could build that up and get a nice deep window so that my little shaker elements would fit in there nicely. Here I am cutting out the window pieces for the 4 square backdrop. I didn't need them, so I just trimmed them out, and it gives me just one big window. It's so versatile, this die. I love that I can use it in different ways like this. With that now ready to use, I then needed to fill in that little gap at the back of my window. So I cut just a tiny piece of matching pink cardstock, and I roughly lined up where I needed this heart to be, just so it looked a little bit more seamless. And I stamped that with the same color ink that I used before, and then just a few more little hearts just to fill in the little gap there. With a window, it's never going to look perfect, I guess, because you do have the depth difference, but this kind of just made it look a little bit more seamless and like it was well planned. Using some double-sided tape, I just went around the edges on the back of the card so that I could stick the pink piece of card onto it to finish off that little window. And there we go, all lined up. Now moving on to the front of the card, I used some low tack tape, and I usually just run it on my arm or on my clothes just to make it less sticky because I don't want it ripping anything. And I place it along the spine of the front of the card, and I'm going to use some of my, I think it's tumbled glass, there we go, tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink for my background. It was the closest I could find to the pen that I had used, and I'm just going to stamp lots and lots of cupcakes all over the place just to fill in the gaps a little bit because it was looking a bit too white once I put my window on it. And I went and did the same with the little heart. This time I used the solid heart. Now it's time to remove the tape, and it looks nice and neat, although I still managed to get a spot of blue ink on the back of the card. I'm just talented like that. It was now time to fill the shaker, and I have these little stars. I didn't really think about, stars and hearts clashing a little bit, but I thought they were very cute and that it would work well regardless. So I stuck them in the little window. I ended up using green, although I didn't have green on the front of my card anywhere because it is my grandmother's favorite color and this card is for her, so I had to sneak it in there somewhere. I put those little stars in, and then I used some of the Lawn Fawn chunky glitter. I knew this was kind of going to go everywhere in the shaker and all over the background where it wasn't meant to be because it is so much thinner than the stars, but I did want something else other than the stars in the little window. The thinnest double-sided tape that I could find, I went around the very edges of a piece of acetate that was cut to fit behind the window. So this was thin enough that it would hide behind the frame and wouldn't be seen on the outside. And then it was time to line things up and have a little bit of a play around with all my placements. I use this double-sided tape because it's not really permanent until you let it sit for a while, so I still had plenty of time to play with the placement and move things around without them adhering permanently. Putting that little jar up the top above the shaker window was probably my favourite part of making this whole card. It was just really exciting to see it work, especially having so much trouble working it out at the beginning and finding that piece of ice cream die actually worked. It was just really, really cute. So now I am just flipping over the acetate and putting down some of this double-sided tape again on the back. It may seem a little bit funny, but I needed the acetate to stick to the background in some places because I couldn't put any glue around the window itself. This is because you'd see it. You'd see right through this whole window, and I didn't want the glue to be visible. So putting some adhesive behind where these images are going to sit just gives the whole thing a little bit more support so that my little stars wouldn't go flying around where I didn't want them to. It was then time to take all those images off and make sure that was all stuck down nicely and give it a bit of a test shake to make sure that not everything would go flying out on the first shake. I then stuck that window down, and now it was time to put all my little pieces on the front. This is always my favourite part because I love seeing the scene come together. So I had some pieces stuck directly onto the window and then some raised with some double-sided foam tape. My little shaker jar was still looking a little bit bare, so I coloured it in with some of my markers. I really wasn't sure what I was going for here. I just didn't want it to be plain. And then I covered it with a little bit of glue, stuck a few little stars on it, and some of the chunky glitter. And as soon as that had set just enough, I then covered it with a little bit of some sparkly Nuvo drops. I wish I had some clear for this. I think it would have looked much better if it was kind of raised and looked more like a glass jar, but it was all that I had, and in the end it still looked pretty good. Then I finally got to stick that little jar on the front of the card, and I just love how it lined up and looked like all those little stars were pouring out of the jar. One of my favourite crafting items is my Wink of Stella pen. I love adding sparkle to everything. Any excuse for more glitter. So I covered the piping bag with this and the tops of the cupcakes to make them look a little bit more sparkly and cute. I added some very, very small little drops of glue to my cupcake so that I could stick some of the stars on, and some tiny little bits of chunky glitter as well. I thought if there's stars pouring out of the little jar, then there has to be some stars on the cupcakes too. Now, I apologize for this angle. I had struggled so much with the sentiment for this card. I think I tried maybe 4 or 5 different ones. I just couldn't find anything that fit perfectly in this spot, which is ridiculous because it's such a big spot to put a sentiment. But I finally came up with one, and by that time the sun had set and I had run out of natural light. I don't work with any fancy lighting when I do my cards. Everything you see is just daylight, so I couldn't use my phone directly above my work spot because I had a giant shadow. So I did it on the side. I swear I'm never going to do this again. It just looks so silly. But you can see that I did finally come up with a sentiment that worked. It matched the colors perfectly, and I stuck a little cupcake on with it to continue the theme. I had covered the whole back of this piece with double-sided tape so that it was ready to stick onto my card base. And then I saved the final touches for the next morning when I had proper sunlight and could show my work properly. And here we are the next day, back to a proper view, and I stuck some glue on that final cupcake so that I could match it to the rest of them. It was covered with my Wink of Stella glitter and some little stars and some chunky glitter. Any excuse to add a little bit more sparkle, I stuck a few of those little stars on my banner as well. I can't wait to send this card to my grandmother. I really hope she likes it, and I hope you have enjoyed watching me make it. If you do like this video, please make sure you like it and subscribe to my channel. I have so many exciting things in the works at the moment. I am going to be part of a hop, which is Lawn Fawn themed, so make sure you subscribe so that you see that when it comes out. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to work with some of my favorite YouTubers. I'm so lucky to have already been asked to join in and things like that. I'm so excited. I'll see you again soon. Bye!